Okay. Shall we reconvene? Is there a motion to get us out of, or a certification to get us out of closed session?
Yes. So we have two things to correct. So the community police and management team, actually that appointment is being postponed to June. And we had...
Don't we first have to do... Oh, I see. I got you. Never mind.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we had not mentioned Region 10 Community Services Board. That was marked off an error on my list, and so we did discuss the Region 10 Community Service Board appointment.
Okay.
So I will now read us back in.
All right.
I move that this council certify by recorded vote that to the best of each council member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion convening the closed session were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed session.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Ms. Thomas, will you take the vote, please?
Councilor Payne?
Yes.
Councilor Pinkston?
Yes.
Mayor Snook?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 4-0. So let's begin the 6:30 business meeting with a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Councilors, any announcements? Hearing no announcements, we have one proclamation. This is Women's History Month 2023. And whereas women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of Charlottesville in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, and whereas women play a critical economic, cultural, and social role in every sphere of life in Charlottesville, and whereas women of every race, class, and ethnic background have served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement, and whereas women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist and emancipation, industrial labor, civil rights, environmental, and peace movements, which have created a more fair and just society for all. And whereas despite these contributions, the role of women has consistently been overlooked and undervalued in the literature, leadership, teaching, and study of American history, and it is therefore fitting that we recognize their numerous accomplishments. And whereas the 2023 theme of National Women's History Month is celebrating women who tell our stories, encouraging recognition of women past and present who have been telling their and our stories through print, radio, TV, stage, screen, blogs, podcasts, and more. And whereas the City of Charlottesville honors women in our community who have devoted their lives and talents to producing art, pursuing truth, and reflecting the human condition decade after decade, now therefore I, J. Lloyd Snook III, Mayor of the City of Charlottesville, on behalf of City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2023 as Women's History Month in Charlottesville, and we call upon all residents to acknowledge and honor the contributions and accomplishments of women. Signed and sealed this 20th day of March, 2023. It's our proclamation for the day. Board and commission appointments.
Okay, I have the list.
Okay.
So to the Board of Architectural Review, Kevin Badke. For the Charlottesville Affordable Housing Fund Committee, term ending in 2023, end of this year, L.D. Perry. Charlottesville Economic Development Authority, Stephen Johnson and Jay O'Donnell.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
The Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee, Patrick Healy, Ethan Heil, and Sarah Medley. For the Jefferson Madison Regional Library Board, Ann Hemingway. For the Minority Business Commission, Tara Farley and Nicole Hawker. And for the Region 10 Community Services Board, Francesca Diggs. And last but certainly not least, the Tree Commission, J.D. Brown, Susan McKinnon, Tyler Miller, Jeff Pacelli, and Micaiah Tolbert.
Okay. Is there a second? I take it that's a motion.
I move that these folks that I just listed be appointed to the respective boards and commissions.
Second. Okay. Ms. Thomas?
Counselor Payne?
Yes.
Counselor Pinkston?
Yes.
Mayor Snook?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Yes.
Okay, passes 4-0, and congratulations to those who have been selected, and we thank everybody for their willingness to serve. You know, Mr. Councilor Pinkston made a comment about the Tree Commission. It's funny, we get more applications for people who want to be on the Tree Commission than any other body. It's a popular group. We appreciate their service, and we appreciate everybody's willingness to help out. Now it's time for the consent agenda. Ms. Thomas, would you please read the consent agenda?
Consent agenda. Number 3, minutes, February 21st, regular meeting, March 6th, regular meeting, March 9th, budget work session. Number 4, resolution, settlement for opioid-related claims, second reading.
Okay. So those 3 items, we will now take public comment regarding items on the consent agenda just read by the clerk. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. In the Zoom webinar, you may select the raise hand option to be placed in the speaker queue. If you've joined by phone and wish to speak on the consent agenda, you may press *9. We'll alternate between in-person and virtual speakers. And this is only for those last couple of items. It is not, if you were one of those who signed up in advance, this is not your time. Anybody wishing to speak on the consent agenda items? Nobody in person. Anybody online wishing to speak on the consent agenda items?
Yes, Mayor Snook, there's one raised hand. Jane Evans.
Ms. Evans, I note you're on the list to speak at Community Matters. I think you are. I beg your pardon, you're not on that list. But if you're going to talk about the tax rate, this is not the time to do that. I know she had sent a couple of emails to me about the tax rate, so I know those.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, yeah, it was about the tax rate. I thought I was on the list, but when I came to City Hall, they said I'm not. So when that agenda item comes up.
Oh, well, actually, it'll be coming up in just a few minutes, so don't wander far.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, anybody else online wishing to speak on the consent agenda items?
There are no additional hands.
All right. So, any questions or comments from council? Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Thomas, will you take the vote, please?
Counselor Payne?
Yes.
Counselor Pinkston?
Yes.
Mayor Snook?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Yes.
Okay. The motion passes 4-0 to adopt the consent agenda. Mr. Rogers, is there a report from the city manager's office?
There is no report tonight. We will have a report at the next council meeting.
Thank you. I should add, in case anybody's wondering why we don't have a city manager, we have something like 10 budget meetings this month. And so there are plenty of opportunities to hear from the city manager, and he's got a lot of other things to be talking about. We'll get him in April. Community Matters generally, we have 5 pre-registered speakers, leaving 11 slots for additional speakers on Community Matters. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. Same rules. They have a raise hand option on the Zoom webinar, or *9 if you're on phone. We've got, let's see, the first registered speaker is Wayne Hazlett. Is he with us here? Or is he online?
Mayor Snook, I do not see Mr. Hazlett in the Zoom.
All right. Next up is Susan Cruz, who is not here. Is she online?
She is indeed.
Susan, fire away. 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Susan Cruz, Executive Director with the Community Climate Collaborative. For the past several years, I have come to you to request a plan for action on climate. Tonight, I am not here supporting planning. Tonight, you have the opportunity to act directly to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our community. I'm speaking tonight in support of the First United Methodist Church's appeal of their solar panel installation that was recently rejected by the Board of Architectural Review. The vast majority of our community's emissions, 92 to 95% of them, are not directly within city control. These emissions come from our homes, our businesses, our cars, and our churches. That means individuals and organizations will need to act on their own. The last thing that the city should do is to be a barrier to that action. The First United Methodist Church has done everything right. They have raised money, they have made a plan, and they are ready to take action. Unfortunately, they were stopped in their tracks by our very own Board of Architectural Review, relying on city codes last updated 2 decades ago. The rejection was not a unanimous decision. The Board of Architectural Review was nearly split. Tonight, I hope you will weigh in favor of action. Climate cannot wait. Tonight, let's take the first of what I hope will be many actions to get our city on the path to carbon neutrality. Please vote in support of the First United Methodist Church appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz. Our next speaker, pre-registered speaker, is Matthew Gillikin, who is, I don't see him here in the hall. Is he online?
Yes, Mayor Snook.
Mr. Gillikin?
Good evening, councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm speaking on behalf of Livable Seville in support of First United Methodist Church's appeal to place solar panels on their roof. We have 3 requests. First, approve the appeal and allow the church to move forward. It is obviously the case that solar panels should be allowed and encouraged on their roof and others throughout the city. First United Methodist Church should be applauded for their efforts to use their resources to shift to renewable energy. Our second request is that you amend the Board of Architectural Review's guidelines to include the comprehensive plan and climate action plan. This should happen as soon as possible to help prevent this from happening again. The members of the BAR appear to have differing interpretations of whether the current guidelines allow them to approve a project like the solar panels on First United Methodist Church. A quick amendment by council will help avoid a repeat of the appeal you are hearing this evening, which is a waste of everyone's time, other than it may possibly result in better processes in the future. And third, we ask that you direct that a review be done of the BAR guidelines to update them to ensure they are consistent with the comprehensive plan and serve a productive rather than obstructive purpose. Numerous examples exist where the BIR decisions prevented the city from achieving its goals. A thorough review and update of BAR guidelines will help ensure that the city's goals are met. Separately, with respect to the zoning rewrite, we'd like to express our appreciation to council, the planning commission, and city staff for the hard work being done on the zoning rewrite. The city is closing in on a historic accomplishment that is a key piece of addressing our affordable housing crisis, addressing past injustices, and establishing a path for opportunity in Charlottesville. This phase is involving a lot of nuts and bolts, and it's very technical, but we encourage you to continue pressing on through these details, and we look forward to continuing to work with you throughout this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gillikin. Next up, Tom Gallagher. I see Mr. Gallagher is here. Tom, you want
to... We have a public hearing for the tax rate as well, correct?
Well, that's true. We do have a public hearing for that.
I think we had someone from our staff called earlier today to clarify whether it was related to the real estate or whether the comments would be regarding other taxes.
Okay.
Uh,
But real estate should be during the public hearing.
Right.
Mr. Gallagher, could you wait a few minutes until we get, we'll discuss it all at one time. Okay. Appreciate it. You'll be on the list. And then the next person up is Martha Smythe. Is she online? I see that she's got tax calculation. If that's also going to be about the property tax issue, maybe we should defer her too. Okay. Is Ms. Smythe with us?
I do not see her in the Zoom.
Okay. And then we had Ms. Evans, who we just talked to, and again, I had forgotten that we actually have a public hearing, which we'll come to in a little bit. Ms. Evans, if you're going to be also talking about the real estate tax rate, could I ask you to wait a little bit longer?
Mayor Snook, my apologies. Martha Smythe is in the Zoom with us.
Okay. Ms. Smythe?
Great. Thank you for including me in this discussion. I'm not speaking about the tax assessments or the potential of a rate change. I do want to speak to you, though, this evening about questions I have. What is the basis of the calculations of the taxes? If GIS is used, I have noticed that the file really does need to be checked. I just looked at half a dozen or so properties in my neighborhood, and the acreage is listed as different numbers depending on whether you're looking in the detail tab under GIS or whether you go over and look at the dimensions under the map. In my case, it goes from 0.161 under the details to 0.23. Now, using 0.161, the value of my acreage, if I were to ramp it up to a full acre, would be over $900,000. And when it was at 0.23, it was, of course, down in the mid 600,000s. So that is a peculiar situation. Moreover, as I looked at some of my neighbors and did the same calculation, their value per acre was as low as 611, and some were well over 800,000 per acre. I also noticed that we have different additions that are listed in the details of the properties, and they seem to be rather inconsistent. One home does not add up to its 3/4 second story plus the first story for the main square footage. And so that's, like, how did that happen? The total square footage is listed in detail. Some of the houses do not include permitted features, additions, and it's hard to understand how these calculations are based. So since there were absolute inconsistencies that I did uncover, I would ask that council direct someone in one of the finance department areas to work on this and clean this file up. If I totally misunderstand where the numbers come from, then we all need an answer to that question. Thanks for hearing me out, and I also would like to endorse the appeal of the United Methodist Church. I think that's it for me now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smythe. Is there anyone in person who would like to speak in public matters other than the tax rate question, which we'll come to in a minute? Okay. Anybody else online?
Yes, Mayor Snook, we have a few raised hands. Peter Krebs.
All right. Mr. Krebs.
Good evening, council and members of the public. I'm Peter Krebs from the Piedmont Environmental Council. I'm a Charlottesville resident as well. I'm speaking in support of the 2 grants to acquire the Cason property that's toward the end of the agenda. Those 2 grants add up to about $350,000. It's a lot of basically free money from the state, but it is also important to acknowledge that it's the result of probably a decade or more of work. So I'd like to salute the staff for their creative thinking and for their stick-to-itiveness. This piece is really important for a number of reasons. Number one, it's a key link in the string of properties that PC has been working with the city to acquire along Moore's Creek. So it would build a greenway really from Price Spring all the way to 5th Street and 5th Street Station. So you've seen the piece of that go in between, just to the west of it, between Old Lynchburg Road and Sunset Avenue. There's a lot more going on in that area as well. First of all, there's a ton of housing that's in the county right across the creek from there in Eagles Landing and several affordable housing sites. And in fact, it's a strategic priority for the county. They're working on building a sidewalk underneath the 64 at Old Lynchburg Road. So, you know, I love it when the city and county work on the things that are problems together. So that's great. And also another benefit of this project is that I think it's going to help firm up the future of the IRC gardens that are there. Let's get that into public hands, not in private hands if possible. So that's it. Thank you, City Council. Thank you, City staff, for the work, and I'll enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Thank you. Got anybody else online?
Yes, Mayor Snook, we have Rory Stolzenberg.
Rory, fire away.
Good evening, Council, and thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Rory Stolzenberg. I'm a resident of West Water Street, and I'm speaking tonight in my individual capacity. I'd like to express my strong support of First United Methodist's appeal of the BAR decision to reject their plan to power their building with clean rooftop solar. The current BAR guidelines are clear, and I quote, "Nothing in these guidelines should be construed to discourage green building or sustainable design." At present, our primary source of electricity in Virginia is the burning of methane, with a substantial portion from the burning of coal as well. It's critical that we shift to zero carbon energy sources in order to meet Council's adopted climate goals. I urge Council to send an unequivocal message to BAR that they must issue COAs in accord with their guidelines, including the clause overriding other aspects of the guidelines to explicitly allow sustainable building practices, and that the BAR must refresh their guidelines as required by ordinance every 5 years. In addition, consider taking a lesson from this situation and, following our current zoning rewrite efforts, explore removing disincentives to changes that our own climate action plan calls imperative by removing binding COA review of clean energy projects from BAR's purview and thereby removing their ability to block them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stoltenberg. Anybody else online?
Next up, we have Kimber Hawkey.
All right, Ms. Hawkey.
Good evening. Thank you for taking my comment. I'm talking about something that Martha was talking about with the math is off on assessments. This is related to the tax rate, but not exactly the same thing. When looking at the price per acre on the GIS map, it's all over the board. And for example, in our lot that is rather normal and our squeaky old house, we're priced at over $1 million per acre, the price per acre. But if you look at other lots that are both nearby and then citywide even, the price per acre is less, even though they have larger lots, bigger houses. Some of those houses have been updated, renovated, and some of them are even using their space to either rent apartments or as Airbnbs. So again, the math is off somewhere. You have to compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges in these situations. And so we keep getting our assessment pushed up, even though we live in this old leaky, squeaky house. And so it's a problem when we live next to a house that has been renovated, but yours is not. It's a problem also to talk about the market rate of a house. You don't really know what the market rate is until that house has been sold. Otherwise, the city's just engaging in real estate speculation. And there just seems to be a systemic and institutionalized gentrification of the entire city with its ever-increasing assessments. We need more equity and transparency as far as how these assessments are done, rather than just saying, oh, it's the Dillon rule, or, you know, it's the market. So I would ask, as Martha did, for something's got to change. It's not clear. It's not equitable. It's not fair. The math is off. Is what it comes to for me. In the time I have left, I'd just like to also talk about the fact that if somebody comes to the city council meeting and wants to sit there, and there's room, and I see there are rooms to sit there, even though they have not, supposedly not signed up, they should be let in I'm not sure if it's even legal to tell someone that they can't come into a public meeting like that, especially when there are open seats. And if someone doesn't have internet access, for example, it's not very fair. And I've been told by a few people that this has happened to them. So I would ask that if there are open seats, that people be let in. Thank you very much. I'll talk later about the tax rate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkey. Anybody else online?
We have Robin Hoffman.
Ms. Hoffman?
I wasn't going to talk tonight, but then I heard that you refused, or that there was a refusal by an architectural review for the church to have solar after all this planning. I just received a grant from Dominion. I don't know if it's, I just signed a contract. I'm going to get solar on my house. And it took like 2 seconds. They came over and they made me sign a contract, and I'm not going to pay a dime, apparently. I don't know if that's cool, but that's what I'm doing. And I just want to say that Susan Cruz and all these people trying to get our climate and to make our city clean, and trust me, if you get rid of all this methane, people will have less medical issues. They'll be able to work harder and longer, and all this effort, I can't understand for 1 second, especially after all the planning, that anybody would be refused solar. And then also I want to encourage people to join the Chamber of Commerce here in Charlottesville. Is unbelievably active. I just went to a lunch and met somebody from Foothills Child Advocacy Center, and this company will go to our schools and spend time with our students that are having so many problems because of anti-socialization during the 3 years that we've been holed up. And so I just want to say that the Chamber is really attracting a lot of marketing people and that sort of thing. You don't have to actually, if you can't afford to belong, you can go to their meetings. And I encourage that very much. And lastly, I want to say I was petitioning for Michael Payne for a ballot, and I heard so many heartfelt stories about how people don't live here because they can't afford to. I wish I had a GoPro on my head so that you could hear the testimonials and the reasons why people are not living here. And they have 3 jobs, and they have to, they have no child care, et cetera, et cetera. Those things that people are trying very deliberately to make quality of life. We have to tell the wealthy people of the city they have to pitch in. Pay for the parks, pay for gardens, pay for housing, so that they can have quality of life and they can have service. Who's going to clean their homes or whatever they need done, electric, this, that, teachers. This all comes from something, and you can't just keep taxing people who are working. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Got somebody next?
Next up is Lisa Torres.
Ms. Torres?
Good evening, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to chat tonight with you all. I appreciate it. And as you know, I am a city resident, and often we interact when I'm wearing my hat for the school board, but I am here tonight as a community member. And I come to you with a lot of concerns. I come to you with I guess just an urgency and an ask of you all, and the fact that those of us who do have the ability to advocate for others, and like I said, for myself, I often am advocating for the schools and those students, but we look to you as council to manage budget, and we're right in the midst and the meat of you all making some tough decisions on what to fund and how the money gets allocated. In 2017, as we all know, in August, that really kicked open the door and allowed for the mobilization of a lot of groups with the goal of addressing and highlighting a lot of the disparities within our community. There's been some excellent work, and I know that work continues. And I think we are all aware now that there is a crisis occurring currently in our city, and how we define crisis can vary, depending on, and it could be housing, as was said in your earlier work session, what is the definition of affordable housing? What is the definition of deeply affordable housing? The crisis could be climate. The crisis could be tree canopy. But really it's gun violence and making sure that we take care of our youth. And we as elected officials, we as a community need to hold each other accountable to take care of our own. We can't leave people behind, and we have, and we are. And I have a lot of points, and I'm not... I'm going to fine-tune these and refine them, and I'm going to continue to show up as a community member and ask you all to really consider putting aside some funding to support our youth. I mean, we have a lot of people who have a lot of great ideas. We have space within our city to support our youth and to be a place, but I think we need funding. I know there's been discussion about strategic plans with Parks and Rec in 18 months from now, and there's a lot of talk. We're really good at talking about and acknowledging what these problems are, but we need action now. And so I, as a community member, I'm asking all of you to please really consider setting aside some money to support and to be available for funding if we find space for our youth and for some of these other things. So I'll be back. Thank you for the time tonight, and I appreciate all the work that you all are doing.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. Somebody else online?
Mayor Snook, I see no additional hands.
Okay, last call for anybody here in person wanting to speak on a matter other than the tax rate. Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. We do have one more, Katrina Turner.
All right, Ms. Turner.
Good evening, Katrina Turner. I just want to ask, when are you all going to open city council up to where we don't have to register? I mean, literally everywhere in the city is open. No mask policy anywhere that I know of. What is the problem about allowing citizens to come into city council without having to register for a seat? Why is it that you all have to know who is coming to city council every 2 weeks? Why can we not walk into city council freely like we used to? If I'm not mistaken, I believe our tax dollars are paying for this building. So why can we not walk into city council and join a meeting without having to register? I just can't understand this. I'm echoing the caller before me. You know, there's people that don't have phones, that don't have computers, that might want to just walk off the street and speak to you all, to let you all know what's going on in this community. But for some reason, you all do not want to face the citizens. Why is it? Do you have to know how many police there needs to be there for the people that's going to be there? Because I haven't seen any police there since we've had to register for a seat. So I'm just asking you, like so many people in this community want to know, When are we going to be able to just walk into city council like these children do at school? If the children can go to school without masks and get taught every Monday through Friday, why can you, city council, not face your citizens every 2 weeks? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Turner.
Mayor Snook, we also have Rosia Parker.
All right, Ms. Parker.
Good evening. Behavior is a language of trauma children will show you before they tell you that they are in distress. Children don't get traumatized because they are hurt. They get traumatized because they are alone with the hurt. A child has experienced trauma will sometimes show they feel connected to an attachment figure by releasing all their big emotions in their presence. What may appear as disconnections may actually be a sign of trust, if not being heard, no self-worth or hope or understanding. Repeated childhood trauma causes a child to live in a constant state of hypervigilance, always alert to impeding perceived danger. The disruptive voices that you hear are from voices of Black and brown people's cries for help over decades. To no here, generations are damaged, hurt, traumatized, dehumanized, carrying tremendous weight on their shoulders. Our children need our love, presence, parents, community, government, not jail cells. Mental health endures a lot when our children have been abused over time. All they know is hurt people, even if it's their own race, which is disturbing due to slavery. This is the result of the impact of violence of all kinds, but mostly guns. These children are different. They are misguided, miseducated, and misunderstood, fighting in survival mode for daily life. Charlottesville is now an urban plantation. There needs to be leadership, a choice, a chance. Don't cry about what you don't have. Use what you got. Charlottesville has plenty of money and resources that aren't available to the Black communities. Better living, education, and better treatment is what we need in our community. So please, don't look down on nobody unless you are helping them up. Leaders must be tough enough to fight, tender enough to cry, human enough to absorb the pain, and resilient enough to bounce back and keep moving. So that's what I am. I am a voice for these young children, which are my children, which I have put my life on the line to protect at any given moment of all hours of the day or whatever it does take. I am a mother, I am a grandmother, I am a godmother, I am a mother to a community that looks and trusts and respects me. So I expect for the government of local Charlottesville to do something to be able to help our children to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Anyone else online?
I see no additional hands.
Okay. So there will be another Community Matters opportunity at the end of the meeting, plus in a little bit we will get to the real estate tax rate public hearing. So next item on our agenda is the appeal of the BAR denial of the Certificate of Appropriateness for the First United Methodist Church. Mr. Werner, presenter.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Warner. I'm the Preservation and Design Planner, and in that capacity, I serve as staff for the Board of Architectural Review, or the BAR. And just to some of the comments that were made, certainly we encourage people to install solar panels on their roofs. I would just offer this recommendation: have your roof inspected before you cover it with panels. Always make sure everything's taken care of before those things go up. Make sure you've got that maintenance resolved. So I'm here tonight regarding the appeal of the BAR's January 18th, 2023 denial of a COA for the removal of portions of the existing slate roof and the installation of asphalt shingles and an array of photovoltaic panels at 101 East Jefferson. Constructed in 1923, First United Methodist Church is a colonial revival brick church and has a 3-story brick tower with a wood frame steeple on the east elevation. The property is within North Downtown ADC District, and the structures are designated as contributing which means that they contribute to the character of the ADC district, and the ADC district being the local designation. As allowed by city code, the property owner has appealed the BAR's decision to you all, and your role in this is to make a final decision on that COA. That is to determine if the requested slate roof removal and subsequent installation of asphalt shingles and solar panels should be approved or denied. And per city code, for an appeal, council shall consult with the BAR, and the BAR chair is here tonight, and consider the appeal, the BAR's review criteria, and any other information, factors, or opinions it deems relevant to the application. So our recommendation, our staff's recommendation, is for you all to make a final decision tonight and to not refer this back to the BAR. And within your staff report are suggested motions, one for approval of the request and one for a denial. And finally, if the owner of 101 East Jefferson Street is aggrieved by your decision this evening, they do have the right to appeal that to the Charlottesville Circuit Court. So quickly, regarding the BAR's discussion of this request, back in August last year, Mr. Owens, an architect working with the church, contacted me about the installation of solar panels. And, excuse me, during the September BAR meeting, I informally sought input from the BAR and communicated that back to Mr. Owens. And the BAR asked, how will the panels be installed and mounted? Where will the cables, conduits, equipment boxes be placed, etc.? How high will the panels be above the slate roof? And importantly, how will the slate roof be protected during installation and maintenance of the solar panels? Generally, the BAR was concerned about how activity on the roof would impact that slate. The BAR also expressed a preference for the panels to be installed on the rear of the building, or there's a rear building, and to avoid panels on the sanctuary. And they suggested evaluating construction of a frame for the installation of the panels over the church's parking lot. On October 18, 2022, the BAR reviewed a formal request to install the panels onto portions of the slate roof. A motion to approve that request failed by a vote 2-4. The applicant then requested a deferral. On January 18th of this year, the BAR reviewed the revised request, and that was to remove portions of the slate, install asphalt shingles, and to install the solar panels. And by a vote of 4-3, the BAR denied the COA and cited the following. Removal of the slate and obscuring and damaging the slate conflicts with the BAR's guidelines, and the proposed installation does not comply with the Secretary of the Interior standards. And I have some images. I don't know, David, if you've got those queued up, but possibly. But they do show, and you will have it in your...
There we go.
Okay, so this first slide, there's two, this and the next one, David, these are the two images provided by the applicant. Next one, David, this is the view from looking northeast. Next, David, is from looking from the park north, and the last image here is looking west from the top of 2nd Street. And I think there's one more in there. And so I'll get to this in a second. But during the BAR's discussions, 3 primary questions were weighed. How much damage will be done to the slate during installation and subsequent maintenance of the solar panels, and how will that be mitigated? And per the prescribed standards for review, is the installation of solar panels appropriate at the proposed location? And then per the prescribed standards for review, is removal of the slate entirely or partially and replacement with asphalt shingles appropriate? And just to quickly get to where we are, the ADC guidelines, the ADC district design guidelines recommended solar collectors be installed on non-character defining roofs or roofs of non-historic adjacent buildings. Additionally, the Secretary of the Interior standards, and this is the federal level recommendations for historic properties, offer 10 criteria, and they are in the staff report. And when you apply those to this request, the germane criteria just did not support its approval. And one of the things that we have here is that slate is a very long-lived, durable product. Properly maintained, a Buckingham slate roof like this one can exceed 150 years. This roof is believed to be original to the 1923 construction, so it's got some life left in it. Absent the installation of solar panels, there is no demonstrated need to remove and replace the slate. And regarding the apparent conflict of the BAR standards of review and the city's broader policies and goals, we acknowledge this, and go to that slide, David. This is my recommendation to the BAR, and I said that, to be clear, the strict application of the guidelines and of the Secretary of Standards would recommend denial. These are what the BAR is instructed with using. I said that the options available to the BAR were approve the request as instructed by the guidelines, in a sense working to devise a creative solution that meets the applicant's goal for sustainability. Part of that was considering installation in the parking lot. Or B, deny the COA, acknowledging the matter can be appealed to City Council, and you all may consider additional information, factors, or opinions. And so that's how we got here. If you would, next one, David, and then I have images for discussion, but I just want to leave with this one. I've gotten a lot of emails about this. I know you all have. Since 2010, the BAR has reviewed, I think it's 15 requests to install solar panels. All of them were approved, except for this one here. But all of them prior have been approved. Now, none of them were for an installation on a slate roof. And so I think that where, I'll let Mr. Gastinger probably address it more eloquently than I can, but where the BAR was is that you have a sustainable material there. You have a historic material, and the historic guidelines and recommendations do talk about sustainability, and they talk about the life cycle of materials. And we have, like I said, a slate roof that was in place, and weighing that against removing it, installing asphalt shingles, installing solar panels. In the application of the guidelines, there was a 4-3 vote to deny that request. So, and I know here, and then, well, Breck, hold on, and then where's Bill? The church. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, he's next. So, unless you had any questions for me.
I don't think so at this time.
Okay, good.
Steve?
Well, I'll definitely have some questions. Can he come back up later, or
Sure. He's not going anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere.
All right, thanks. I want to hear everyone, but I'll definitely have some questions for you, Mr. Werner.
The next up would be the appellants from the church. It says appellants to speak up to 10 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Bill Owens, the architect shepherding the solar panel project for the church. I'm also a church trustee. I'm here this evening with the Reverend Alex Joyner, fellow trustee Guy Moffitt, church member Fred Snyder, also a retired architect, correct? And church member Cindy Remington, and hopefully numerous church members on Zoom. Thank you for hearing our appeal this evening. I've detailed most of my thoughts in the appeal letter, so I won't take up a lot of valuable time covering those again, since there's other folks here who want to speak this evening. However, I would like to reiterate that we don't necessarily disagree with the BAR's decision so much as we think the decision was made based on out-of-date design guidelines that are now in conflict and incongruous with the current visions and goals of the City of Charlottesville towards the use and promotion of sustainable energy. The ADC guidelines were last updated in 2012. In fact, the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation that serve as the basis for much of the BAR guidelines have not been updated since 2011. Even the BAR members admitted during the meeting that we had in January that the guidelines were indeed in need of updating, particularly in regard to renewable energy and particularly solar panels. To that point, we were actually encouraged by several BAR members to appeal the outcome of their vote. We've also received support from the city's climate program staff. Since the guidelines were last updated, over the past 10 years or more, the city has approved numerous statements, standards, plans, amendments, and initiatives that not only support and encourage sustainable energy, but also make it a matter of governing policy. Some of these documents include the City Council's Vision Statement 2025, the Solarize Charlottesville Campaign, the Charlottesville Standards and Design Manual, the city's strategic plan, the city's comprehensive plan, and most importantly, the Charlottesville's Climate Action Plan that was just adopted in January as an amendment to the comprehensive plan. There are others, but of all these documents support and encourage sustainable design, renewable energy, or solar panels by the City of Charlottesville. The members of the United Methodist Church wish to demonstrate their commitment to stewardship of the environment and the City of Charlottesville community through their support of sustainable energy. The solar panel project grew out of this commitment to stewardship. To not allow the solar panels on the roof of the church would not only stand in stark contrast to the recent decade of progressive Charlottesville environmental and energy policy, but also deny an expression of faith by a long-time downtown church that wants to set an example of one congregation's response in acknowledging their obligations to address the climate crisis. We hope you will let First United Methodist Church be an example for the downtown and the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owens.
Reverend
Other
Joyner.
members of the church?
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak as well. My name is Alex Joyner. I'm pastor at First United Methodist Church, which has a long history, as Bill has just outlined, in the downtown Charlottesville community. Our current building will soon be observing its centennial, but the congregation has been established here since 1834. And like many downtown congregations, the people of our congregation have had to balance the challenges of maintaining and improving an historic building while maintaining a vital and responsiveness to the community around us. And rather than move out of the city center to more modern facilities, the congregation at several points in its history has made the decision to remain. That's not been easy. We believe we've taken good care of the building that previous generations entrusted to us. We believe we've been good neighbors, working with the BAR on previous occasions when we've looked at improvements and alterations to make the building more useful and energy efficient. Those encounters were sometimes challenging, but we recognized the community interest in historic districts. The current project grows out of a faith commitment to care for the environment, which is central to Christian witness. Our newly formed Creation Justice team, made up of church members, has helped lead us to consider how we can be better caretakers of the world around us. And it's also grown out of the vision of an individual to offer a significant donation towards solar panels. And that's something that we celebrate in moving us in that direction. Of course, we were disappointed in the decision of the BAR not to offer a certificate of appropriateness. But we do believe, like the 3 BAR members who voted in favor of the certificate, that there was room within the current guidelines to approve. But having to face the additional hurdle of an appeal, I feel this can be a positive outcome for the church and the city. An affirmative vote by you tonight would begin to move projects like ours, and there will be many more, I'm sure, will move us towards a greater city vision for climate action in Charlottesville. And I hope it will also prompt the city to take up an overdue revision of the BAR guidelines for sustainable energy projects in historic districts. Planning Commissioner Carl Schwartz was quoted as saying, following the BAR action on our certificate, some guidance from council would be very useful, since our guidelines are very vague. We've heard from a lot of community partners after the BAR denial. At least 15 people have notified me that they were going to be on the Zoom tonight who are supporting this appeal. There are a lot of folks who love this city and have voiced support, and the support that's been voiced for sustainability and climate initiatives. They're waiting for the council to take steps to make this a reality. And we want to be part of making this community a better place for all people. It's the essence of our vision statement, which is to love the whole city and to love the city whole, starting right here. So I thank you for your consideration of this appeal and urge your positive action on it. And I'm going to yield now to Fred Schneider, who's a member of our congregation.
Good evening. I'm Frederick Schneider. I live at 506 2nd Street Northeast, and I'm also a member of First United Methodist Church. I'm also a retired preservation architect, and I have served as a past member of the Scottsville Architecture Review Board for 10 years, including some time on that board as vice chair. I understand the perspective of the BAR concerning the historic First Church building. It's a dominant feature of the Market Street Park neighborhood and of our city. I also understand the BAR's desire to preserve the character-defining features of historic buildings, guided by the Secretary of the Interior standards for preservation. However, I know from my experience in Scottsville that the work of architectural review often involves balancing the needs of preservation with those of building owners and users. Frequently, these are economic concerns, but increasingly, they include efforts to keep older buildings viable for contemporary uses and for making these uses sustainable, including environmental sustainability. In situations like these, preservation goals can't exist in a vacuum. If building owners cannot respond to changing needs by making responsible adjustments to their buildings, then they are hampered in their ability to be good stewards of those buildings, our collective architectural heritage for future generations to use and enjoy. I also understand that some BAR members may feel constrained in their authority to allow changes to buildings by the provisions of the ordinances empowering the BAR to protect historic resources. However, City Council's authority is based on a wider mandate to be not only stewards of our city's buildings and infrastructure, but to use resources wisely to benefit the citizens of our community. First United Methodist Church's proposal to install solar panels provides council with an opportunity to reflect this wider body of responsibility. It demonstrates that the city is supportive of efforts, both public and private, to use energy conservatively and innovatively to respond to changing needs and global concerns right here in our own community. It encourages others to take similar initiatives and shows that we can all be part of solutions to be more environmentally responsible. These values are embodied in the city's comprehensive plan, and here we have an example of putting them into action. I hope that you will support First United Methodist Church's desire to do just that and approve their proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. So, if there's anyone else from the church? No? BAR?
Thank you, Mayor Snook and councilors. And my name is Brett Gastinger, and I serve as chair of the Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review. And I'll first say that I voted in favor of this proposal, but I respect the work that we did and the conversations that we had, and I will be here to represent the decision of the majority. Before I speak about this project specifically, I just want to take a second to step back and put some attention more generally about our charge at the BAR and how it relates to the future of our community. There are many reasons that this community sees that it's important to preserve our historic buildings, neighborhoods, and landscapes. But many people don't think or appreciate that historic preservation is inherently a sustainable practice. Again, historic preservation is inherently a sustainable practice. It's often said that the greenest building is the one that's already built. Demolishing buildings and constructing new ones requires a tremendous amount of material, energy, chemicals, raw material, transport, associated pollution, and the amount of landfill waste can be staggering. To live sustainably as a community, it is imperative to take care of the working historic structures that we have, and I think that everyone here in this room wants to do that. But I just want to take that moment to highlight how important historic preservation can be to our sustainable goals. This project is a pretty interesting one because on the one hand it envisions generating solar electricity downtown, but on the other hand at the cost of removing and potentially damaging a significant feature, its slate roof. And I'm really grateful actually for the First United Methodist bringing this project to us. I think I found the conversation not only genial and detailed, but also an important one as we tease apart a tricky conversation. It was a tough call, and it was a close vote, as I already mentioned. Project was denied 4-3. There are a few other things that I want to clarify about the BAR and our deliberations, and I think there have been some misleading assertions in the media and in response to this project. For the record, the BAR is supportive of solar panels. As Mr. Werner mentioned, we've approved 15 projects, and this is the first time that one was denied. And it was also the first one that was proposed on a slate roof, and it has some tricky circumstances. Out of all the sky available in Charlottesville, this is one of the trickiest spots to install solar panels. Additionally, I want to say that our guidelines are not incompatible with solar. I don't agree with that assertion. The Secretary of Interior Standards, to which our guidelines refer, and actually they were updated in 2017, offers a range of specific guidance on how solar panels might be successfully and unsuccessfully incorporated into renovations and rehabilitations. Furthermore, for this request, the BAR majority was not concerned about the visual impact of panels on the roof as designed, or their presence within the historic district. So I don't know if that was clear in our decision, but the concern was not about the solar panels. Lastly, our own guidelines, in addition to the Secretary of Interior standards, they do implore us to think creatively and proactively to favor sustainable technology. Sustainability is literally the first topic in our design guidelines after the introduction, and it implores flexibility. And I'll just quote one of the sections here. Sustainability and preservation are complementary concepts, and both goals should be pursued. Nothing in these guidelines should be construed to discourage green building or sustainable design. If such a design is found to conflict with a specific guideline, the BAR shall work with the applicant to devise a creative solution that meets the applicant's goal for sustainability and that is also compatible with the character of the district and the property. So why was the project denied? It was about the slate roof. The primary concern was this character-defining feature of this historic structure, and doing so in a way that could jeopardize the building into the future. This is a character-defining feature, and it is one that could remain in place for 50 years or more. It is in good condition, and it is visible from public rights-of-way. Our guidelines discourage altering character-defining features on historic buildings, especially roofs. In our guidelines under the section on roofs, Section G, number 7 says, when replacing a roof, match original materials as closely as possible. Number 8 says, place solar collectors and antenna on non-character defining roofs or roofs of non-historic adjacent buildings. And I will note here that for the solar array that was proposed, only a small portion of those solar panels are facing south. Slate is a remarkable local material that lasts for 100 to 150 years. Buckingham slate is just quarried not that far away, and it's said to be some of the highest quality in the world. It's been quarried since the 1700s. It is a sustainable, inert material, and as such, especially installed, has a much less carbon footprint than in replacing it with asphalt shingles, the solar panels, and which will likely be made overseas. And this roof that will replace the shingles would have a life cycle of around 20 years. Now, these considerations about sustainability are not expressly considerations in our guidelines, but I think it's important to think a little bit more deeply about the sustainability related to replacing intact, inert, and functional roofs. It is not sustainable to remove a slate roof, which is in good shape, in favor of technology which the applicant admitted will be obsolete in 20 years and will require replacement. Additionally, some members of the BAR were concerned about the integrity of the roof and how it will age with a novel combination of slate and asphalt shingles, intermittent braces for solar panels, Such a mixture introduces a lot of opportunity for water penetration, roof failure. And our goal here is long-term preservation and viability of the structure, and it all starts with the roof. Clearly, this project is unique. It brought up a number of potential conflicts within our guidelines, but the board had deep conversations with the applicant, city staff, and thoroughly discussed many sides of the issue while working within the guidelines. In the end, it was a close vote being 4-3 against. Thank you for your time tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about our discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Gastinger. Any questions for any of the people who have spoken thus far?
Yeah, yes. Well, maybe it's...
Or should we go to the public comment?
Sure, yeah.
Let's go to the public comment. Okay, so actually, we don't have public comment on this one. I'm sorry. It's the next one. Getting confused. So, fire away.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. So I'm not sure who I should direct my question to besides the collective group. Mr. Warner, since your staff, would you come up and take it for the rest of them? Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, so I guess from my perspective, if it sounds like the BAR was okay with the way it looked, the sort of aesthetic perspective. There was another thing Mr. Gastinger said that they, I can't recall the other thing that the BAR didn't have an issue with, but that came down to simply the fact that we were going to be disturbing existing Buckingham slate and putting in asphalt shingles so that the assembly, we're replacing one assembly that's working perfectly well that could continue to work perfectly well for another 50 years with an assembly that might work for 20 years and could have leaks in the meantime.
Generally, yes.
Okay, so that's sort of the pith, I think, of what's really at issue as I sort of sifted through things. I guess from my perspective, I mean, if the Reverend and his church are willing to take on that liability of having a leaky roof that they have to repair in 10 years' time, why should I, my capacity as city councilor, why is that something that, again, I'm using you as kind of a foil, and I apologize.
That's all right.
I'm asking others, why is it that we as city council would care about their private building if we're confident that they're going to take care of it, it's not going to get run down or whatever, and we are confident that they'll take care of it. I'm just not sure what interest I have in keeping them from getting leaks, to put it really sort of, crudely.
I mean, that's a valid question. A number of ways to respond. One would be, that makes perfect sense. The other would be, from where the BAR, I mean, as we discussed, I think a month ago, the BAR operates within a box, and that's the box in which it made this decision. I think
one of your prime directives is to help the city ensure that it takes care of really important resources like that church.
Yeah, and I think, and I guess I could answer from, I get this question a lot. I live in a historic house. I have to go to the BAR. I've told you. I've had to go to the BAR. I have the windows that were installed in my house in the 1880s. I could go spend a lot of money to put all new windows in and take all my windows out, but there's a calibration of what is involved, what are the costs and benefits of that. So not trying to question their decision. Heck, my church put solar panels on the roof. One of the things to evaluate is, all right, and I don't know if the BAR's has the ability to do this, but in terms of environmental stewardship, what are the costs and benefits? Is this carbon footprint of the new, offsetting, what's being removed. And I don't know how to answer that, but I offer you that's a perspective that we're weighing. Whether their roof leaks or not later, I would hope it wouldn't, and knowing Bill, I'm sure it won't. Yeah. I think the other part of the answer would be we have a lot of slate buildings downtown, slate roof buildings, and it would sort of, I guess, to make a decision that's not just a, hey, if it's slate roof, take it off and put on solar panels. I mean, if there's, because that really kicks the leg out from one, positions the BAR has. Now, to answer the question about the BAR's guidelines, we were in the process of reviewing them, and then COVID hit. And then we are hoping to, when the zoning rewrite is done and kind of know where things settle, would be the appropriate time to evaluate it. But I think that, sort of anecdotally said, our guidelines don't, allow this. But I think, in fact, the guidelines do, and they allowed some flexibility. The BAR simply opted for the direction that was in it to deny.
Well, I think as Mr. Gastinger said a minute ago, it's pretty clear that there was robust discussion among the professionals and others that make up that committee, and it sounded like it really came down to a close decision in terms of what was the most appropriate. I don't know. We could have someone from the environmental team maybe assess how much carbon we're getting rid of by taking out slate and putting down asphalt versus what we offset with. My guess is that my guess would be that the solar panels would win in terms of carbon mitigation. But to me, this comes down more in my mind to if this group feels like they can take care of their building and they've got a licensed architect working on it, I don't know why I would contravene that.
And it looks like the appellant had a response to one of the points about leaky roof or something.
Yeah, if I can give some history just real quick that might address some of your questions. So when we first went to the BAR, that was in October, that was our first time, we were going to them more interested in not how we would do it, but can we do it? Because we didn't want to waste the time in Tiger Solars and everyone's efforts applying for grants and all that stuff if the BAR, which we knew would be a process here to take the time to do that. And so we went to them in October, and the conversation quickly went not from the solar panels themselves, but how are they installed? Will they damage the slate? A lot of time on whether the roof would leak or not, which our point was that's our problem, not yours. And it quickly became apparent that was how the panels were actually mounted on the slate roof became a stumbling block. And we could see the vote was going south, so we deferred. And based on that, we actually met with our roofer and came back, and the system we're proposing now is in response to the BAR, removing the slate, putting down asphalt shingle, which is a more traditional installation of solar panels, since it's done mostly on residential. The panels sit only 6 inches off the roof. They overhang their mounts, so it's going to appear to be slate everywhere except under the panels. Right. And that is to provide a better weather-tight, it'll actually be two roofing. We'll put on a rubber membrane and then an asphalt shingle that will be actually better than the entire slate roof is now, because it's just a stone roof with nothing underneath it 100 years ago. Sure. So actually the system that we're proposing now understandably removes the slate, which we've promised to keep, and we found a replacement source for anything that's damaged. It's far superior to what is anywhere on the roof right now. And that was in response to what the BIR said. I've got technical information here if you'd like to see it. We originally proposed to mount them on this. None of the shingles would have been removed, but it involved, obviously, you've got to mount the panels to something. So it involved drilling through the slates. And I have a system here I could show you if you're interested. But anyway, but it retained otherwise than that. But by drilling through them, we obviously damaged some of the slates. But in general, it kept all of them. They did not like that. So we came back in response to something that prepared, again, more weather-tight, because that seemed to be the focus of our conversation in October and January, by removing the shingles and promising to keep them and do so forth. That did, our vote improved, but not to the point that we were given permission to do it. So I wanted to make sure you had the history. And we tried to maintain the entire roof, and that was met with some resistance. So,
thank you.
questions?
No, not really a question. I think that I think the main concern is that we want to clear up the guidelines, not just only for this committee, but for a lot of the groups that volunteer for us, that they need clear direction. And I think that we're in the process of doing that now with the various studies and things that we have going on, because I think if it had been plainer or easier to comprehend, then a lot of this would have been avoided, I believe, because I think we want this, and if we can't have one policy to contradict the others for the citywide. So there's no need, we're there. I understand. I'm just saying this is something that we're working on now. Y'all were starting on the policy, and COVID hit, and now we are. I'm prepared to support this. I'm just, I want that if other places are thinking about doing this and they're seeing what's going through now, they may be reluctant to do it. And I think this is something that we want.
I think, if I could say this, from a career in preservation, and part of that is a contractor and builder, you don't put people on a slate roof unless they need to be there. You can go, the 5 of us could go run around an asphalt roof all day long. But a slate roof, when you walk on it, you break it. And so there's, just so to kind of express the legitimate concern about activity on a slate roof. You don't fix a slate roof like you do an asphalt shingle or a metal roof. And in my experience is when, heck, even when I was in grad school, I worked on the slate roofs on the lawn. And, for every slate you fix, you end up stepping one, you hear that crack. So, it's not that there's a bias against a slate roof. I mean, there's a legitimate concern about activity on them. So it was kind of a catch-22 of, and I even said to Bill, boy, if you guys had a slate, if you just had an asphalt roof, this would be a non-discussion. So there's sort of that conundrum there. But I don't know, even the solutions that they had of installing things onto a slate roof, there's still that activity on it. So I'm not sure our guidelines will be able to take care of slate roofs as easily as we'd like, but hopefully we will get to those guidelines in the next year.
Thank you.
I just have one question. For the BAR, one of the points you referenced was the sustainability of new asphalt tiles needing to come in and the carbon footprint impact of that versus solar panels. Did you do any analysis of the actual numbers there?
No, we're a volunteer board, and we only have that time available in the meetings. No, but many of us have worked in sustainable design for many years and know the impacts of a building project, and it's something that we consider, and I think it's just something for us to also consider. I just want to make sure that that's part of the conversation as well.
Mm-hmm. And I respect that. I just think it's a claim that needs to be substantiated if it's going to be a justification for a decision. I have no other questions. I mean, I concur with others. I'm prepared to support the motion to allow this to go forward. And I don't know what, if anything, needs to change in terms of providing more guidance and clarity to the BAR in terms of what we would like to see. But I do think if they're looking for direction from council, at least my opinion is that the BAR needs to be trying to facilitate allowing solar panels and other renewable energy infrastructure in historic districts rather than throwing up roadblocks. I think it can always be appealed to council, and I think council is probably going to approve almost all of them anyway, barring extreme circumstances. But I worry whether it's just a waste of time for the applicant, and it could discourage others from pursuing these projects or increase the cost of doing so. And just the final thing I would say respectfully to the BAR is maybe zooming out, looking at the big picture. I think this whole saga has probably done more to hurt the cause of historic preservation than anything in recent memory, because it has now created an impression among a lot of people in the community that this is a body that is oblivious to the big picture and is throwing up barriers to renewable energy. And I think it's going to take a long time to recover from that reputational damage in the community. So.
Okay. So first, again, I will say, and you all wish to approve, there's a sample motion in here, and I would just rebut by saying, the BAR has established clearly, in its record, it's what it's done with approving solar panels. I hear this all the time in the community about what the BAR doesn't allow, and it's a lot of myth out there. So I'll stand on the record and stand proudly, and I think we did a lot of work. I think the staff report represents that. I think the BAR's discussion represents that. So I really do want to push back this insinuation that the BAR is putting barriers up. That's just simply not true. But I thank you for your time, and thank you for your vote.
Could I ask one question? I want to be sure that I understand what the actual, if we grant the appeal.
It is approving the application as submitted. So as they presented it to us on January 18th, that's what you would be approving.
Which would be going to an asphalt roof?
Correct. And I
on all facets of?
And it's where they had designated removing the slate where the solar panels will go. And I in fact had asked Bill if they wanted to evaluate with you all maybe going with the slate option, but I think there's, at least from my understanding, I let him address it, but the preference is to go with the asphalt shingled roof and then install the panels there.
And the idea being that what we would see from the street would just be slate and solar panel.
More or less, yeah. I think, and there's a curb that will, but I think the visibility of it is sort of working out with what goes where and how that system gets engineered. It may or may not be, exactly where the photo sim showed, but it'll be on those roofs.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. Again, the solution was in response to feedback we got previously from the BAR on our other trip for our first visit. The panels overhang their mounts by 2 feet.
Right.
So the idea is to keep the removal of the historic shingles as minimum as possible. They'll, again, only 6 inches off the ground, off the surface, so you'll actually be standing on the roof and not even see the replacement roofing. We are trying to commit to domestically resourced solar panels, if that's possible to do that. And this is not ingrained in stone as far as the actual details of what's going underneath, so if we can get recycled or more sustainable shingles underneath, we certainly, at least under my direction, will pursue that. Again, the result of that was we are providing a much more weather-tight installation for the solar panels, which was a big concern when we went to them in October. So we're just trying to satisfy what was put forward to us.
If the sample motion in here for approval, application number BAR 22-10-02, does that define the design solution they have to use, or does it basically just say, you can put, does it tie the architect's hands in terms of the what I call means and methods?
Well, it comes back through me, so yeah, it's really not. It's not a carte blanche, but it's the intent of where they wish to put things. I mean, that's clear. We've had discussions. And so I'm quite comfortable with you all using the motion that's there, because then Bill and I would be. I mean, if I said, all right, that's not what you guys said in October or whatever, we would. But that's I'm not worried about you all being overly specific in this motion. As far as our next steps.
You can be confident that if we do anything that would cause rancor among anyone who would visually see it as obvious, I will run it by Jeff. I mean, that's.
Do you anticipate going with the solution that's been laid out, the asphalt shingle with the extra heavy-duty waterproofing?
Yeah, I mean, asphalt may be kind of a general term. It's going to be, again, it's
EPDM
going to be a weather.
Or something?
The concern again was the lack of weather tightness of the slate shingles, and so it'll be something different. That seemed to be the best solution for the solar company, the roofer, And then again, and the idea is it won't be seen, it won't matter, and it's weather tight is what matters because you can't get to it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I won't be getting into what shingle or weatherproofing material they use. That's not where we're going.
Well,
are we good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to say, in due respect to my colleague, who I have a lot of admiration for, I don't know. I just want to say that I think it seems to me that BAR followed the process, and we're at a point now where, is this the first time? There's 15 examples of this, right, where you've awarded things or you've given approval. It's just the first time with a slate roof. So basically, we're setting precedent for what to do with slate roofs, right? That's what's happening now. So that's a good thing, and I feel like the process worked, and I think the professionals who were involved deserve some credit for that. So,
were you about to
thanks.
make a motion?
I am.
Voice of experience there.
But who's in a hurry?
I have it up. I can.
Thank you.
I would move that upon consideration of all the information and factors referenced in City Code Section 34-276 and 34-286, I move to approve a certificate of appropriateness for application number BAR 22-10-02.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I would just say, I don't mean to be too harsh. I do respect the BAR. I do respect the work you all do. I do think historic preservation is a real thing that matters. But I would, when I go around the community, I hear a lot of negative feedback and mistrust generated from this. And maybe the process is the process. I don't know, but I hear a lot of reputational hurt.
Yeah, it's just an opportunity for me to do an ad. But yeah, I have people say, it took me months, and I'll go look up and I'll say, it didn't take you months. So but I appreciate it. No disrespect intended. In fact, Mike, you were at we have another one coming to you all for a project on Stadium Road, and you all are going to get an appeal for that 2005 GPA. So you'll be seeing more frequently than ever. I had two appeals in the prior 5 years. We're going to have 4 going into the spring. So
2 in the last 2 months.
I'll see you all soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, call the question.
Councilor Payne?
Yes.
Councilor Pinkston?
Yes.
Mayor Snook?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Yes.
The motion passes 4-0. If I could add, I think that the precedent that I hope we've established is, rather than giving anybody carte blanche on anything, it's do the best you can to preserve the slate. But do the best you can, it doesn't mean you can't even try. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, now we come to the proposed real estate tax rate for FY 2024, City Manager's proposed budget, and Mr. Rogers or Ms. Hamill, who's presenting this?
I'll kick it off, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
So we have, this is the first public hearing for the proposed FY24 tax rate. I presented to you on March 6th a balanced budget of $226,239,155. Revenues and expenses, of course, matched for the balanced budget. That represents a 6.27% increase from the FY22 budget. We did not propose any increase in the tax rate, so it's flat, same as FY23. So tonight, the discussion is on that proposed tax rate.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Hamill, or you're up, or you want to say anything before we go to the public hearing piece?
No, thank you. I'm all good.
Okay, so let's go to the public hearing. And same rules as before. If you are online and would like to speak, there is a either *9 if you're on the phone, or a raise hand in the Zoom option. We'll alternate between in-person and online, starting with in-person. And I'm going to start with Mr. Gallagher, because he was the first one who had signed up in the earlier provision, and I kicked him back. So Come on up, Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you. Good evening. So, my name is Tom Gallagher, and I live on Barracks Road in the city of Charlottesville. So, I've given you a graph that has two lines on it, a black one and a red one. The red one is the typical tax on the relative typical tax on residential property in the city of Charlottesville over the 2000 to 2022 period, and the black line is inflation over that same period. So looking at the inflation first, you can see that it rises from 1 to a little over 1.5, reflecting the fact that something that costs $1 in 2000 costs about $1.50 now. Okay, and I put that line on there because to some reasonable approximation, that's what I would expect the cost of running the city, how the cost of running the city should grow. So in contrast to that, the red line is the actual property tax collected for this typical residential property, which, as you can see, is vastly higher. It doesn't go up from 1 to 1.5. It goes up to over 3.5. And I don't quite understand what's this area in between those two curves is. I mean, I have no idea. I don't see the expanded city services that represents. So this, of course, impacts me, but it impacts everyone in this room. I mean, no one is immune to this. And in fact, of course, the people who are most hurt by this are people who have fixed incomes or people who have low incomes to start with. And the latter are, of course, generally looking for affordable housing. And so I would like to just consider what such a person might have. If you had a house that was, or if you were living in a house that was appraised at $90,000 in 2000, you paid $1,000 a year in tax. In 2022, you paid $3,600. Or if you like that per month, that your tax went from $83 a month to $300. That's quite a hit. And so I find it sort of hard to understand how the city council can be always talking about affordable housing and yet approving these really rather remarkably large real estate taxes over the last 20 years. And so I think the time for a reduction in the tax rate is here. And thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Sorry to made you wait. Is there anybody online who would like to speak to us?
Yes, Mayor Snook, we have a couple of raised hands. Jane Evans.
All right, Ms. Evans. Again, sorry to have made you wait.
That's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm Janie Evans. I'm a resident of Charlottesville. I'm also a school social worker for the Charlottesville City Schools and have worked with a lot of our at-risk, low-income, and homeless populations in the city. The city talks about affordable housing as one of its primary goals, yet, as Mr. Gallagher said, our property tax rate has increased significantly in the last several years. While it affects me by increasing my monthly payment by several $100s, each of the last 2 years has risen, and I will soon be on a fixed income, and I'm concerned that I will no longer be able to afford to live in Charlottesville just because of the tax rate. I also looked and see that in Virginia, about 66% of the homes on average are owner-occupied, but in Charlottesville, only 41%, according to the 2021 census, are owner-occupied. So that means about 60% of the homes, the owners do not live there. They rent their homes. And if their tax rate increases by $200, $300, $400, guess who's going to pay that is the renters. So that affordable housing idea goes out the window. And again, I wonder why the budget has increased as much as it has, given that property values have increased by about 25% in the last 2 years. I noticed that salaries, employee compensation in the current budget have about doubled. The amount of money that goes to the city manager's office has doubled from $3 million to $6 million in the budget. And I also noticed that the amount of income that the city guesses they're going to be getting from real estate taxes is about $7 million less than what I calculate. When you see that you got $85 million in 2021, you're thinking you're going to get $99 million in 2023, yet the property values went up by about 25%. So I think that you might have a little extra money there. I also noted, as I submitted to City Council earlier, that our real estate taxes are about 30% higher than the state average and about 35% higher than the local average when you take Charlottesville out of the mix. As Mayor Snook pointed out, and I appreciate you responding to my email, that may be comparing apples to oranges, as Charlottesville is a city and counties may not have the expenditures that the city of Charlottesville does. However, I don't see that our expenditures, like Mr. Gallagher pointed out, should have risen to the dramatic degree that they have in the last few years. And I propose that our tax rate be reduced. The time has come. I propose a new rate. If we took away the 25% real estate assessments increase in 2 years, it would be about 77 cents. A compromise would be about 86 cents. I propose we change it to that.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Okay, let's come back to anybody in the room here who would like to speak. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Holly Mason. Mayor Snook and councilors, thank you for the opportunity to talk this evening. I want to not take much time. I agree with the prior two speakers, Mr. Gallagher, and I have been a Charlottesville resident since 2007. I have seen for our property a doubling of the assessment. I think that the people of Charlottesville who live in Charlottesville are hurting, and the tax rate, they're not even always aware of how it's buried in a mortgage payment. But I think it is time for a change. I think it's been over 100% increase in the last 16 years, and that's a lot of money. So I would appreciate y'all considering that and reducing the tax rate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mason. Let's go back to online. Anybody online?
Up next, we have John Hosick.
John Hosick. Mr. Hosick.
I speak tonight in opposition to the functionally raised property taxes. In the context of the ongoing zoning process, you've selected 20% of city streets for special treatment, 6 to 12 units, reduced plot size, 3-story, no off-street parking, 4-foot side yard, 10-foot front yard, and all by right. You do this because you know you cannot do it city-wide. You've never once presented a coherent rationale for the map. In fact, in November 2021, when the 5 councillors voted for the FLUM on the map, everyone acknowledged that the FLUM was a work in progress at best. What's happened since? Not a single change, despite allegedly a plot-by-plot analysis. This plan isn't progressive or reasoned, it's radical, and per the last work session, no one even understands the infrastructure costs attributed to the city because of the lack of pathway to get developers to pay for infrastructure in a by-right environment. Last week, a development on Avon Street was dropped from Planning Commission agenda. It had 100 pages of opposition. From where I sit, it looks like the applicant has been told that their plan will go through more easily in a post-rezone environment. Really? Is it that easy to short-circuit 100 pages of citizen opposition? And now you expect citizen support for your tax raise? Many opportunities for affordable housing exist. Consider the many empty plots that have been identified, 10-acre City Works yard, extensive empty retail space, Giant and Kmart, etc. You approved nearly 150 units last year in a single neighbourhood. My voice here counts for very little in this process. However, as you progressively lose the support of a swathe of citizens, a price will come due. The city's reputation in terms of trust in process is being lost. Your vision statement rings hollow and worthless, namely green city, mutual respect, and smart citizens-focused government. Therefore, although I have never once opposed tax raises in my life, I strongly oppose this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hosick. Back to in-person. Anyone else in person? Okay. Back to online.
Next up, we have Kimber Hawkey.
Ms. Hawkey?
Hi, thank you for hearing me again. I would like to echo what has been already stated. I won't repeat the numbers. I think what Mr. Hossack is talking about is that with your increased assessment, you say that there's no tax increase, but there's a hidden tax increase by these crazy increases in assessments. People talk about taxing the wealthy, but what is wealthy? In a recent Daily Progress article, there was a statement that for a $400,000 home, one needs to earn $165,000 annually. Well, the city keeps trying to push our home price up to that $400,000, but we don't even earn a third of that, if that. It's many people don't earn that. Last year, I also want to remind everybody that we really had a triple tax increase because assessments went up, you increased the property taxes, and the personal property taxes went up as well. That's a triple increase in 1 year. So you had a surplus, millions of dollars in surplus. Was that even used to fund the affordable housing fund? Nope. Everyone got a raise instead. I understand that salaries are important, but we keep talking about affordable housing. Why wasn't that funded? I didn't get a raise last year. So I agree we need to reduce the tax rate to level things off, make things more equitable. I would also like to point out that looking at the calculations for the Buford renovations seem massively like you're overpaying for that renovation. I used to be a public school teacher, and I understand the need for a nice building, but more important are teachers who are paid well and a solid curriculum than the building. I used to teach in Africa where we were just outside. So building is not that important in education. It's more the quality of the education. Again, it just seems like the city is participating in a systemic and institutionalized pushing out of low and middle income people. And this is all part of the affordable housing discussion, as has been pointed out. I would also say that you need to increase the income limits for the grant money to help the elderly and disabled. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkey. Next person online.
We have a newly raised hand, Brandon Collins.
Mr. Collins.
Good evening, City Council. I just felt the need to chime in and present a different view than those that were just expressed about the tax rate. I am a lifelong member of the Charlottesville community, and I am privileged enough to own my own home. And, with the assessments going up, it has been a challenge. I don't make a whole lot of money either. But on the other hand, we have to fund things, and we are in an affordable housing crisis. And at the bottom of all this, my home is some wealth that is being built. Anyone who owns a home is building wealth, and I agree we need more in tax rebates and more money into the CHAP and everything else possible to help lower-income folks pay their mortgages and pay their taxes. But what the folks who were just speaking, I don't think understand the extent to which poverty has taken hold of this city, especially when it comes to rental housing, when you've got more than half of the people in this city paying more than half of their income towards rent, modest increase in their rent from a real estate tax is the least of their worries. Their rents are going up exponentially higher than any effect that the tax rate has on a landlord and their mortgage. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It was a mistake not raising the real estate tax many years ago when there were good times, and it has been tough the past few years with COVID and inflation, and the timing of that to meet the needs of the schools was pretty tough on a lot of folks. We do need more tax relief for sure. There's always an issue with the assessments, and I tell you what, if we can do a better job with affordable housing, those assessments can change too. And I'm glad you're not raising them, but I don't think you need to lower them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. So, who's next online?
Mayor Snook, I see no raised hands.
Last call. Anybody else here in person? Okay. All right, so that will close our public hearing then on the question of the proposed real estate tax rate. The next opportunity for public comment on the fiscal year budget, fiscal year 24 budget, will be this Wednesday, March 22nd at 6 p.m. at City Space, with pre-registered seating for up to 20 and electronic participation by Zoom. One thing I would like to add, Ms. Gallagher, thank you for the chart. I would note that back in 2000, the property tax rate was $1.11. I assume you don't want a 15% increase to get back to the property tax rate we had back then.
In fact, they dropped it in, I think, 2000.
Between 2003 and 2009, they dropped it from $1.11 to 95 cents.
Right.
Yeah.
I took that into account.
Yeah. So
they recognized that the assessments were going up far faster than the cost of running the city.
And I'll just say my own personal view at the time was that, and I've said it before, that I thought we have we cut important maintenance services during that time, and I think we've been paying for it ever since. In any event, so we've got next hearing on this will be Wednesday night at 6 p.m. And that concludes the public hearing as to the real estate tax rate.
And just for the benefit of the public, the advertised real estate tax rate change is nothing this year. So
right. We haven't changed a thing.
But
yeah.
To their point, the market assessment increases are a de facto increase on your budget. So
certainly,
real,
yeah.
for sure.
Okay. Next public hearing is to approve the lease agreement with the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society for the lease on 200 2nd Street Northeast. Ms. Kelly, and I see Mr. Chapman's here also.
So. Good evening. For the record, Brenda Kelly with the Office of Community Solutions. The item you have in front of you is a request to approve a lease agreement with the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society for the lease of the city-owned building and property located at 200 2nd Street Northeast. The lease format is similar to the McGuffey lease that came before you previously that we discussed in more detail. Here are some information in terms specific to this lease agreement. The Historical Society has leased this former McIntyre Library building from the city since 1993. The Historical Society will continue to sublease a portion of the building to the library. The proposed lease rate is a little over $850 a month, with an automatic annual increase of no more than 3%. The proposed lease period is for 5 years. This expires on April 30th, 2027. The city will be responsible for maintenance of structural elements and systems, and the tenant is currently responsible for and will continue to be responsible for such items as grass mowing, general building and property maintenance, janitorial services, utilities, and insurance, and the tenant accepts the property as is. As you noted, we have representatives here from the Historical Society that are available to answer any questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And this is a public hearing, one reading resolution.
Okay. So any questions anybody has for Ms. Kelly before she sits down?
Thank you for this. So this is following the same template of lease that you presented to us at more length with McGuffey, is that right?
Correct. But of course, it's very specific to the Historical Society,
right.
but the template's the same format.
Okay. And it sounds like the terms and conditions are agreeable to them, and
we did
to
negotiate a couple items, and
what
you have in front of you is, I believe, what we've all agreed on is okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I was curious, and I should remember this, and I didn't look it up before I came, but I'm curious about the sort of the ratio between the lease amount and what would be deemed a comparable fair market rent value, $10,000 roughly to $56,000 roughly. What was that ratio at McGuffey? What are they paying, and what you remember what we figured out that their rent would be on a per square foot basis?
I don't recall that information, but this particular lease increases their current lease by 3% annually, and it was similar to that with the McGuffey.
Actually, I think we increased it more than that for McGuffey because we sort of catching up to a few years when we had. Because obviously one of the concerns that I have with a number of these organizations that we admittedly subsidize with the leases is that I want there to be some sense of parity among these groups. And while obviously every group is different and some groups do other things for the community in addition to simply being their own charitable selves, I'd like to try to have some rough equivalence in some way, or at least to be able to explain when we don't.
I'll be happy to provide that information going forward now. Also, we're providing that market rate information in the backup memo for your information. However, in the lease agreement itself, we provide that information as a figure so that the Historical Society can use that as an in-kind contribution that the city is providing to the Historical Society if they, look to go get grants or something like that, and also then that the city can also evaluate what the in-kind rent reduction is actually something that the city is providing as a benefit to the Historical Society as a not-for-profit.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions for Ms. Kelly?
No, Ms. Kelly.
Mr. Chapman, is there anything you want to tell us?
Just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to consider us for a lease to the council. Working with Brenda was great. Having the ability to see how you worked through the McGuffey lease and understanding, trying to bring all of your leases into kind of together into one so that you can look at it over the long term. No, I have no additional statement to make beyond answering any questions you may have.
Okay. You look like you're warming up.
Well, I think this is something, I know, Brenda, you've been real busy for the last year because this is something that's got a lot of attention to us, and therefore but it's something need to be done, all of the different leases and agreements and contracts, and now we're just kind of getting them all kind of in line so that we do know what we have and can kind of update them. So anyway, thank you so much.
Well, okay, so let's turn to the public hearing. Let's take the public hearing. Is there anybody, public hearing? Okay, let me do the standard spiel about the public hearing. If you're on Zoom, raise hand. If you're on a phone, *9. If there's anybody here, we have one person here in person. Let's take that person who is in person, and then we will go see if there's anybody online.
Good evening. My name is Phyllis Leffler. I speak to you as a resident of Charlottesville and as the current president and chair of the board of the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society. First, I'd like to express the board's gratitude to the city for the opportunity to lease the old McIntyre Library building as the headquarters of the ACHS under such favorable terms. Located in this historic structure in such a central location allows us to have a visible presence for recounting the important histories of our region. The generous in-kind contribution of the city is indispensable for the work that we do. Approving a new 5-year lease now will be an important step to create the stability we need to continue to grow and thrive. And I'd just like to quickly add that in 2018, I applied to be a city representative on the board of the ACHS at a time when its leadership was problematic. I think some of you may remember that. That is no longer the case. Our current executive director since 2020, Tom Chapman, has grown and diversified the Historical Society in numerous ways that enrich the life of the community. Walking tours have been reinstated. Our programs, first visual, now in hybrid form, range the gamut from highlighting authors who have written books of local interest to filmmakers, archaeologists, historians, teachers, and even musicologists. ACH has partnered with the city, and specifically with Mr. Warner, to find living descendants of enslaved individuals buried outside the Penn Park Cemetery walls. We're carrying out a substantial oral history project related to athletics and the desegregation of Charlottesville and Albemarle County high schools that give voice to and preserve formerly undocumented stories of both black and white students on the front lines. And we're now working with teachers and students to develop online educational resources. We bring in both paid and unpaid interns and thereby are educating young people to the history of the community. We are actively working to develop Civilpedia as a resource for community knowledge. Our library on local history is buzzing with volunteers who are helping researchers and are digitizing online materials. And the list goes on and on. We do all of this with very minimal staff. Our aspirations are large. Our resources are still too small to accomplish all we want. So I hope you will approve the proposed lease so that we can continue to have a downtown presence and serve the diverse communities that will come to deeper understandings of one another. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Leffler. Okay, is there anybody online who would like to address us on the topic?
We have one raised hand.
All right.
Professor Irvin Jordan.
Mr. Jordan?
Can you folks hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good evening, City Councilors. I'm Professor Irvin Jordan. I reside on Harris Road in Albemarle County. As an archivist historian for nearly 45 years, I urge your reapproval of the Albemarle-Charlottesville Historical Society's lease of the McIntyre Library Building at 200 2nd Street Northeast. My reasons are personal and professional because I've devoted my life to the preservation and dissemination of Virginia's historical culture. I've been a member of the Historical Society's Board of Directors since 2018. 30 years prior, in 1988, I was one of the first African Americans to lecture at the Society, and in 1995, I was one of the first Black Americans to publish an article in its then magazine, Albemarle County History. As I stated in one of my books, the past belongs to all of us or none of us. Scholars and the general public have benefited from the Historical Society's holdings for articles, books, exhibits, and genealogical research. Its museum and collections help share the story of the city and the county. Its current location is not only conducive for visitors, but adjacent to the Jefferson-Madison Regional Library and other downtown cultural amenities. Historians are required to conclude their public remarks by quoting someone famous, usually Jefferson, but I instead choose Frederick Douglass. Quote, "We have to do with the past only as we make it useful to the present and to the future." This is the Society's steadfast commitment to be of service to this community, present and future. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Is there anyone else online who would like to speak to us on the topic?
Mayor Snook, I see no additional hands.
All right, so we will close the public hearing on this topic. Thoughts, Council?
I guess. Well, I should say I plan to vote in support of this. I think there's been a lot of positive changes. I read the recent issue about the history of local ballooning, which was very entertaining. I guess just amusing as I think the society has. Curious, they maybe could respond. I think there's been a lot of good work. They're doing more programming, and I'm going to vote in support of this. I've just wondered if you keep any track of kind of the foot traffic in your building, because I've always just wondered what, if anything, can be done to make the building itself more of a space that is kind of like a place where members in the community gather or visitors gather, or there's kind of community events, because it's just a huge opportunity, that location, that building, and I'm sure the pandemic threw a wrench in a lot of things, but I'm wondering if you're planning anything in that vein in the future.
Yes, Mr. Payne. Starting April 1st of 2020, like a couple weeks right after COVID, has presented some issues in terms of coming into the Historical Society, but it's also provided us some silver linings. And one of the things that we're looking at now is to definitely be more open in our foot traffic. We're tracking visitors when they come in with a logbook. Our research library tracks. We have over almost 90 volunteers on our books, with about half of them very active. We've worked with the various communities. We've had weddings in the courtyard in the back. We've had UVA Equity Center, poetry readings, and other things. We worked with the Renaissance School and Sally Duncan with their local history class, and they were the ones who put together our most recent exhibit. But yes, there has been also plans going back to John Conover, may he rest in peace, but one of the last things he wanted was to probably have me and Jeff Werner up here having a BAR discussion with you maybe about what he had in mind for those front doors in terms of making them more inviting, so that now that we have a lease in place, or I hope you all will approve it, then we may look at some ways in which we can make that edifice a little more inviting and be a little more accessible to the general public.
Well, I would love to continue those conversations and have council be a partner in anything to try to make this space a more public, really community-focused venue. And again, I'm ready to vote in support of the lease tonight.
Yeah, I feel it's very, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I concur. I'm really happy that your program is becoming more diverse over the last 4 or 5 years, and it's much more public as far as the social media, and I see it in different places, so that's good. But what I hear is that every time it just seems like it's locked up. It's it's like a fort. It just doesn't seem to be open and stuff. So, and I'm glad that if that's something that you can work on, because it just seems to be the perception is that it's open just to the elite, and I know that it's not that way, but you have some work to do in that vein, and I know that you are working on it. But so that's.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wade. And it's the history of that building, too, in terms of working with the Jefferson Madison Regional Library recently to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of that building, which JMRL used as a means to receive the award for the best library in Virginia with our exhibit that we put together. But it's tackling that hard history and the realization that a large portion of our community were not allowed in that building for its first 40 to 50 years. So there's a perception there that we need to break, in not only the architectural edifice, but in terms of how it is viewed. So I actually see that as an important aspect of what the Historical Society can do to tell a whole history and use our own building to tell that story and begin that story. And just really quickly, I did have a copy of the McGuffey lease. So basically, we're paying 18% of the total market value, and McGuffey's paying 5%.
I thought it was something.
So look at it. If you would like to look at equity on that manner, I would gladly accept.
Well, as I noted, we have to be careful about comparing apples to oranges. So there are a lot
indeed.
A lot of things there. Anyway, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, do we have a motion?
I would move to approve a lease of property at 200 2nd Street Northeast to the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Thomas?
Councilor Payne?
Yes.
Councilor Pinkston?
Yes.
Mayor Snook?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 4-0. It's approved. Thank you so much. Next resolution, appropriating funding from the Virginia Land Conservation Fund for Moores Creek Parkland acquisition. I've got two, they look like identical issues. Mr. Gensick, are you presenting one or both simultaneously or in sequence?
They're a pair. They're a combined pair. We'll do them in sequence to keep the bureaucratic order, but I can do brief presentations on them. It should be a relatively straightforward grant funded acquisition. Okay, so good evening, Mayor, members of council, and public staff. Chris Gensick, Parks and Trails Planner for the City of Charlottesville, and part of that role, we've been working to acquire properties and easements along the comprehensive plan greenway corridors in the city to develop a network that connects all of our parks and neighborhoods and schools and business centers together with greenway trails. One of the properties we've had on the radar for quite a while is the property across Morse Creek from Azalea Park. It's got the IRC farm garden on it right now, and it's the old Cason Farm Morse Creek LLC. In working with those landowners, we finally came to an agreed price, and we filed for 2 grants. The first one is the Virginia Land Conservation Fund, and the second one is item 9, the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is federal, and they match each other. So this is an acquisition where the city's basically paying some survey and title work costs, and the feds and the states are matching each other with grants to acquire the property from the owner. We are keeping up with the IRC. We've been talking with them to ensure there's some path forward to preserve their garden on site or possibly move it across Old Lynchburg Road to another property that the city owns, a former farm. So we're working with them as part of this because we want to keep that urban gardening alive and well here in the city and urban area. And it also allows us to move the trail to the south side of the creek rather than having people cross the creek twice. It'll save us from having to build a bridge at Azalea Park. We could build one eventually, but this kind of makes it so we don't necessarily need it right now. So these are both resolutions to appropriate funding from these 2 agencies so we can proceed with the legal work and bring this property to closing and put it into our park portfolio probably by this summer.
Okay. So, council, questions?
Yeah, I was out there the other day with you and with folks from Fry Springs. It seems like a really great opportunity. I appreciate you tracking all that down. I just was wondering as I looked at it, is the property not actually in the county?
Correct. The creek is the city limit. In this case, it's part of the urban greenway corridor system. And throughout my career, we've looked at some properties that are just across the border if they make sense to combine the entire, to create the greenway system.
Got it. Okay. Okay, thank you.
So I was noticing that there is actually also a fairly extensive area on the what turns out to be the west side of Moores Creek after it takes its turn to the north that is also in the county, owned by the city, but in the county. Is there an overall plan for that, either the Azalea Park West or the now Azalea Park South or whatever you're going to call it? What's the overall plan for all that acreage?
Generally, we're about to undertake a Parks and Rec system-wide planning process so that we can codify some of these things that are in parts and pieces right now and with updated information about how the public wants things done. The sewer lines along those properties are intended to become a paved, ADA accessible transportation type trail where people get to work, go to the movies, go shopping, things like that. The properties also allow us to have natural surface trails and more fun trails up into the woods. So having a portfolio with that amount of land and space allows us to create that nested system of trails for everybody to enjoy, and whether you're wearing nice shoes or boots or sandals or whatever, they provide a really nice opportunity for that.
So the land itself is actually being paid for by these 2 grants, is that right?
Correct.
And we've got a few closing costs, but the price of $350,000 is through these 2 grants.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that you mentioned something about the garden there, and I think you said maybe move, but if it is, we just want to make sure that it remain accessible as much as possible.
Correct. One of their issues is they keep getting flooded. Their bigger issue is they were on a year-by-year lease. They could have gone away at any time. Get that one taken care of. The piece of Azalea Park West used to be a cropped farm. Until the 60s, they built the interstate. So there's a piece of that property that's basically just an overgrown old crop field, and it's up higher out of the floodplain. So we're looking at access, parking, water, things like that are the benefits of possibly moving.
Oh, good. Okay.
Is there anything that we're not seeing, but that at least get up out of the floodway is a huge step forward, so long as the things you've mentioned, access and all that, can still be accomplished.
Thank you.
And yeah, I don't have any questions, but would just say I know this is like one of those quiet agenda items almost, but I think this is really exciting, and I just really applaud all the work that went into this.
I agree.
And I think anything we can do on City Council to help further facilitate this kind of work would be incredible, and I hope continues to be part of our longer-term planning, because I think the entire Rivanna River corridor is just calling out for this kind of action, because I really think long-term, if we're able to put this together across the corridor, I see something that's a public space that is one of the defining features of our community. I know it sounds ambitious, but kind of on par with the downtown mall as a defining feature. So,
yeah, I agree. That's a good point.
Okay, so do we have agreement to move both of these items to the April 3rd meeting for the second reading on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So in that sense, we're taking care of them at one time. We will actually have to vote on them separately come April 3rd. Next, general business, written report. We've got a written report from Ms. Hildebrand on the Land Use and Environmental Planning Committee semi-annual report. I don't think that there's any presentation to be had here.
Nope.
So we're on then to the final other business. Are there any other business items for consideration?
I want to remark on the last item briefly, but I just want to say it continues to make me really uncomfortable that there is no public body that anyone can access about the planning future of UVA. I'm a city councilor, and I feel like the only coherent information I get about their land use planning is through Sean Tubbs' newsletter. And I know this body used to be public and was closed in 2019, and I just want to say for the record, it makes me very uncomfortable. And other business, people in public comment brought up city council chambers. And yeah, I mean, I just agree with that. I think it's past time.
We're coming back at the next meeting with an announcement on the disposition with respect to the council chamber.
Thank you. I guess technically we would have to have a vote on something since we actually imposed the present regime by vote.
Right.
But yes, thank you.
Right.
I'm getting tired of trying to answer it.
I know. I know.
The other thing I wanted to point out, and Ms. Smythe had pointed this out about the issues with the GIS website. There are a lot of errors in that website, and she points out one in her own property. I found a number as I've done a little clicking around that there are a whole lot of places where if you look in one place, it apparently there's apparently no acreage. Mm-hmm. And clearly, and if you look at the other place, it might be 0.2 acres or something. I'll also say there are also places on that GIS website where they have no owner for the property, but I know the people who live there. And I want to say, hey, wait a minute, I can tell you who's there. I don't know why your records don't show it. So at some point, I hope somebody will spend a little time trying to figure out how to clean up that database.
I talked with Jeff Davis, our assessor, and Chris Cullinan in finance about that.
That sounds like something a summer intern or somebody ought to go through.
Yeah, your two had my two comments on that came up, and I think that it may even be something more than a summer intern. It might be just someone to come in to do a quality check or something, because there's a lot of money on the line with it. So I don't know. I'm sure some company out there, probably Black and
Veatch.
Veatch, yeah. They seem to do it.
Well, the GIS website is not where Jeff Davis goes for his data.
But
it is the offshoot of.
I will note, I think
collection.
Both the website and the data itself, I think, are worth questioning. If others recall, last year, the assessments were systematically wrong at first in the area off Rugby Road, where the highest valued homes in our city are. That year, their assessments decreased in the first draft. And Planning Commissioner Roy Stolzenberg actually pointed out, this is weird, and they looked into it, and they said, oh, yeah, we accidentally made an error in that whole area. So I don't know what's going on in the process but that's concerning.
Anyway, So we're now at the final speaking opportunity for members of the public. Speakers will be given up to 3 minutes. If you are watching us on Zoom, you can raise your hand. If you're on phone, you can press *9 and speak to us. There's nobody here in chambers, so we'll go first to anybody online. Is there anybody online who would like to speak to us?
Yes, Mayor Snook, we have one raised hand at the moment. Robin Hoffman.
Ms. Hoffman?
Hi, I just wanted to clarify something because the BAR was talking about the proper solar panel putting on the roof. Well, the process is, first of all, LEAP came into my house and they did all the air and roof availability for energy use and all that kind of stuff, first of all. And that all happened way back in, I think, 2018. At which point I keep getting these like offers in my utility inserts. I tell people, I've had 7 homes, you got to read these utility inserts because as the tax code and the rebates change every year, some of these companies want to give you free equipment or free HVAC, or they want to get their own rebates and things like that. So you can really afford to do things a certain year. Like I think this year, if you had put up solar or got an EV car or whatever, you could actually get a rebate if you make any income. But anyway, but what I want to say is I just put a new roof on last year. And so I don't know who told what, but I've been getting solar companies calling me all over the place. I think it was the roofing company to begin with, but it could have also been LEAP. I'm just saying all this because I think that there's a very good chance that people can get solar cheap, or if not for free at this point. And I think they should look at the inserts, but also go on the Dominion website or any solar company right now. They probably are informed of it because they're calling me all the time. And but I did contract with one company, and so they said 6 to 8 weeks I should have solar, and I'm not going to pay anything. And it's available for a battery. When they finally get batteries, we can install like our cars and stuff through our solar. But right now they don't have any batteries, so that's the main reason why people may not be putting solar on. But these systems you can transfer for batteries for EV car. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Anyone else online?
I see no additional raised hands. Oh, no. I'm so sorry. Rosia Parker just popped up.
Ms. Parker?
Yes. I'm very concerned about the PCOB as well as my community. We understand that Deshaun Cooper and Bellamy Brown had stepped down in January, the middle of January, and then all of a sudden there was no meeting in February, and then there's a new board in March. There was no public notification that these seats were opening, and also they're worried about a couple of people have asked about how is a law enforcement now vice chair. So and you continue to, this is from my perspective, y'all continue to use our bylaws that was written up, and there are no people on there from the disadvantaged community nor public housing. I'm still trying to figure out what bylaws y'all are using to create that PCOB board, because y'all still have violated the bylaws with me for the last couple of years. So we're still, as a community, trying to have an understanding, because they don't even know anything about it, that there really was still a PCOB. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. I would note that when Deshaun Cooper and Bellamy Brown resigned, I know that there was a story in the Daily Progress about at least one, I think both. It was publicly advertised, as we advertise everything, but there was at least some public announcement of the fact that there had been 2 resignations. There was also an article in the paper about the fact that that the PCOB couldn't get a quorum in January and February, I guess. So there was at least some public discussion of the problem. And I don't know whether there are members of who are residents of public housing. I do know we've got the requirement is not that we have someone from public housing, but it's public housing or a community that has historically experienced disproportionate policing impacts, and we meet those criteria. Anyway, I hope that the PCOB will be effective. It was not terribly effective for the last couple of years. I hope it will be going forward, and I wish everybody well on that endeavor. Any other comments? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all.